Hello, BookTube. I've got a combination of new arrivals and mail to share with you. I've got a few books that I want to show you in new in hardcover or new in paperback, and then a couple of pieces of mail that I remembered at the last minute to wait and open with you. The first book that I want to show you, we'll do the new arrivals first, just 6 or 7 books. The first one is new in paperback. And this is Indian fantasy by an author who has single-handedly created that subgenre. This is Ashok Banker. This is the Burnt Empire Saga, Volume 1. Big fat thing that is based on the Mahabharata, if I remember correctly. This is the first in the Burnt Empire duology. A new series based on the Mahabharata, of the great Indian poem, which is 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined, is thousands of years old, and chronicles events from Iron Age India. The author has reimagined this seminal text as a fantasy series featuring a dystopic struggle for the Kushan Empire between two brothers, one albino and the other blind, and a demon lord who seeks to undermine their deserved power and perpetuate ableist fears across the empire. I read this and really liked it. It's not nearly as pandering and dumb as that ableist mention would have you believe. And this comes out in a big fat paperback. This paperback's $18. Very pretty thing. Comes out on the 24th of March. So if you saw this, or if maybe you've been meaning to get to it, you will soon have a paperback that's at least a little more affordable than the hardcover. This next one is a mystery. I've been on a murder mystery kick lately, and I've been enjoying the heck out of it. And this comes out in late March. I don't think we've seen this on this channel. It's a very interesting premise for a mystery. One of the things I like about murder mysteries is the infinite number of premises. This is by Daniel Friedman, and it's called Running Out of Road. It's a Buck Schatz mystery. And Buck Schatz is not only retired and old, but also experiencing dementia. It's kind of as interesting a crime-solving figure as Lincoln Rhymes, who's completely paralyzed. But let me see here. Once, Detective Buck Schatz patrolled the city of Memphis, chasing down robbers and killers with a blackjack truncheon and a .357 Magnum. But he's been retired for decades. Now he's frail and demented, and Rose, his wife of 72 years, is ill and facing a choice about her health care that Buck is terrified even to consider. The future looks short and bleak, and Buck's only escape is into the past. And I read the opening scene of this with Buck and his wife at the doctor, where suddenly Buck can't remember who the doctor is, where they are, why they're there, at all. And the interview is tense, and naturally the doctor only wants what's best, and eventually Buck and his wife leave, and once he's out of earshot of the doctor and not afraid of being made to look a fool, he asks his wife, "So what's going on here? I'm assuming that the doctor told you that I have dementia." And she says, "No, the doctor told me that I have cancer." It was an amazing opening scene. Made me want to read the rest of it. Buck's past is under attack as well. After 35 years on death row, convicted serial killer Chester March finally has an execution date. Chester is the oldest condemned man in the United States, and his case has attracted the attention of NPR producer Carlos Watkins, who believes Chester was convicted on the strength of a coerced confession. Chester's conviction was the capstone of Buck's storied career, and to save Chester's life, Watkins is prepared to tear down Buck's reputation and legacy. So it adds new poignancy to the title, Running Out of Road. So it'd be a completely different kind of mystery than the ones that I've been reading in 2020, but I'm up for it. Then this next one, this is not a new arrival because we've seen this already. This comes out at the end of March. And this is by Ilana Meyer. This is the third book this is The Poet King. We saw this already. This is the third book in a trilogy. And a fantasy land in which song and music plays a pivotal role. And I remember mentioning that the Song Before Night, the first book in this series, I read and really liked, and that I hadn't read the middle volume at all, and that the combination of those two things made me want to read both of those books again before I read this one. And the publisher was very nice to send them. So here, this is Last Song Before Night. Can't remember if I started my channel long enough ago so that we never saw this. But when did this come out? we would have seen this if it, 2015, no, so right before. All right, so that is the first volume, Last Song Before Night, and then Fire Dance is the second volume. Aren't these lovely? Just lovely. And then this is the third one, The Poet King. So I now have the whole trilogy, and I can now dive in. I read, I told myself that I needed to reacquaint myself with the first book and read the second book before I dove into the third one. Of course, you know what reading nature is like. You're as guilty of it as I am, so don't give me any of that. You're as guilty of it as I am. I, of course, started reading The Poet King and loved what I read. So I'm going to make an afternoon out of just submerging myself in this whole thing to read it to the end. And then the last of the new arrivals that I will show you before we open the mail is a biography. This is by Nicola Tallis, who received her doctorate in history from the University of Winchester. She's author of several books and has previously lectured at the University of Winchester and worked with historical royal palaces and the National Trust. Okay, that doesn't help me, though, because Nicola Tallis really rings a bell. Okay. Here, her books are Elizabeth's Rival, The Tumultuous Life of the Countess of Leicester, which I read and I think reviewed at length, and Crown of Blood, The Deadly Inheritance of Lady Jane Grey, which I believe I also read and reviewed at length. I will look for them and try to remember to post them down below. It's a bit of a pig's breakfast, as I mentioned, because the porting of 10 years worth of Steve writing from Open Letters Monthly to Open Letters Review has left all of those pieces a mess. Now, I'm not looking a gift horse in the mouth. I'm glad they're there. I could easily imagine a situation in which they were all lost. And good luck finding my original computer files of any of those things, the way I go through laptops. But they're a bit of a mess. So if I can find these things, they're probably going to be jumbled and I'll have to resort them. But that's all right. I'll suffer for you. But this is Nicola Tallis's new book. This comes out in the first week of June. And it is Uncrowned Queen, A Life of Margaret Beaufort. There she is. Life of the party. She was the mother of Henry Tudor, the victor at Bosworth, the founder of the Tudor line. And she was, well, let's see without, I don't want to prejudice the jury. Let's see here. This is, in 1485, Henry VII became the first Tudor king of England. His victory owed much to his mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort. Over decades and across countries, Margaret had schemed to install her son on the throne and end the Wars of the Roses. Margaret's extraordinarily close relationship with Henry, coupled with her role in political and ceremonial affairs, ensured that she was treated and behaved as a queen in all but name. Against a lavish backdrop of pageantry and ambition, court intrigue and war, historian Nicola Tallis illuminates how a dynamic, brilliant woman orchestrated the rise of the Tudors. Now, the problem here is going to be one that we have seen a number of different occasions in contemporary biographies. 2019, 2020, we saw 2 different attempts with George Washington's mother, and that is to find some repellent figure in history and somehow make the case that they are misunderstood. That figure will always be a woman. In modern era, it will always be a woman, and the underground contention, whether or not the biographer ever has the cojones, the cobbles, to say it outright, will be that the only reason that this figure has been treated abominably in history is because historians have been men. And that's all right. That's perfectly all right if you want to do that about Lizzie Borden or about George Washington's mother or about Lucretia Borgia or whatever. And now it's Margaret Beaufort's turn. I might point out that a lot of the historians that have worked on these figures in decades or even centuries past would have jumped at the chance to come to a revolutionary, revisionist opinion of them. Not just a question of their social justice warrior credentials. They might have been raving male chauvinist pigs, as an earlier generation referred to it. But they would have welcomed, and their publisher would have welcomed a chance at a selling angle. Believe you me, if there were a sustainable case to be made that George Washington's mother was a misunderstood proto-feminist, someone would have made that case convincingly 100 years ago and reaped the benefits in Book of the Month Club and book club sales. They didn't do it because it's not possible. Not because of sexism, institutional or otherwise. They didn't do it because it's not possible. And likewise, it isn't in the slightest possible to come to a positive impression of Margaret Beaufort. She wasn't even human. But the fact that I go into this book, I know all there is to know about Margaret Beaufort. It's not hard to know all there is to know about Margaret Beaufort. More importantly, I know everything there is to know about her son. The fact that I go into this book knowing that and sort of chuckling is actually not as horrifying as it seems, because this is a talented author and she might convince me otherwise. The fact that I have skin in the game only makes it more fun. It's the kind of fun that those of you who steer clear of biographies and history are missing out on. You're missing out on the fun of this ongoing spitball argument. But we shall see. I'm not gonna read this until a little bit closer to the date. But Margaret Beaufort is about to try and get a nice wax and a shine. We shall see. We shall see if that is possible. Now we'll do the mail. We've got just 2 packages here. One big white envelope and one box. And then we'll be done. And a whole bunch of new releases, more new releases for you to ponder. Oh, fantastic! Oh, great! I was actually wondering about this thing. Great. Okay, this comes out in late March. This is by Nina Sankovitz. I think we saw the advance copy of this. This is American Rebels: How the Hancock, Adams, and Quincy families fanned the flames of revolution. And I'm very happy to have this finished copy because I just learned that I just got the green light to review this for the Christian Science Monitor. So time to get to work. Time to get to work, very much so. I think we saw the advance copy, so the pub sheet might be old news to you, but there are quite a few of you who are new. So let's see here. In this book, the author explores the roots of rebellion in an entirely new way. Looking closely at the central figures in American history, John Hancock, John Adams, Josiah Quincy Jr., Abigail Smith, and Dorothy Quincy Hancock, the author explores how they became revolutionaries that are so well known today, and how each one's revolutionary spirit developed and evolved. Sankovitz explores how these intertwined families, all from Braintree, Massachusetts, and from varied socioeconomic backgrounds, forged a new nation. And the complaint I made at the time when I read this originally, and a complaint that I will probably find a sentence of room for in my review, is that the focal point here should be Samuel Adams. There's a strong argument to be made that John Adams, and certainly John Hancock, would not have seriously considered joining the rebels, adding their pen, their reputation, their energy, their money where they could. Hancock poured a huge amount of money in the American Revolution. That they wouldn't have even seriously considered that, and certainly that they wouldn't have considered it as early as they did, if it hadn't been for Samuel Adams, with his worn-out stockings and his elbows poking out from his old clothes, constantly making the rounds with his dog, constantly talking to people about how there is no, if you game this out, there is no other way, not if we're not going to be slaves. John Hancock was a trimmer. He was an opportunist. It would never have seriously crossed his mind to rebel against the British Empire if he hadn't. I rant that way, but I don't know. I haven't read this. I don't know that Nina Sankovitz doesn't think that as well. Probably Samuel Adams has a prominent role in this book. We shall see. I shall see right away because I have to bone up on this and review it. Very pleased to be continuously writing about the American Revolution. That is a wonderful treat. I recently did 1774 by Mary Beth Norton for the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. I'm not sure if that piece is run yet, but if not, it will be soon. And so that's going to be a review of an American Revolution book, one per month, in a published venue, and that's on top of the ones that I do for Open Letters Review. Now, that's great. 2019 was fairly slim on the ground for American Revolution studies in popular presses, so glad to have the opportunity to weigh in on these things. And then the last thing we have here is a box. So let's see what this one is. Probably another finished copy. Oh, it is. Yes, it is. Oh my. Oh goodness, what a lovely thing. Okay, I didn't know this was coming. This is also late March. This is a naked hardcover from Princeton University Press, edited by Kate Kennedy and Hermione Lee, the great biographer. And this is called Lives of Houses. Isn't that lovely? This book explores the meaning of home and more through fascinating essays, through fascinating essays on houses of great writers, artists, composers, and politicians of the past. The editors are joined by wide-ranging contributors, including Simon Armitage, Julian Barnes, David Kennedy, oh wow, Roy Foster, fantastic. Alexandra Harris, Daisy Hay, Margaret Macmillan, she's great. Margaret Macmillan's I bet she writes, I wonder who she writes about. I'll try it. We'll look at the table of contents. Alexander Masters and Jenny Uglow. Boy, oh boy, what a roster. Fantastic. It has over 40 illustrations, and in it we encounter W.H. Auden living in joyful squalor in New York's St. Mark Place, Louisa M. Alcott's home in Massachusetts, and W.B. Yeats at his flood-prone tower in the windswept west of Ireland. Okay, now I have to know who does what. I have to know. So, for instance, Margaret Macmillan writes an essay called My Mother's House. Might be just personal. Wow, okay. Look at all these people. Fantastic. Okay, well, I didn't know this was coming, but that's fantastic. The subject is fascinating. Okay, so there you go. Oh, the bean is tearing apart the cardboard. Just a piece of paper on the top of her nose. We'll leave her to her savagery. So there you go. We'll make a little pile here. So we have Lives of Houses. Fantastic. Then American Rebels, Nina Sankiewicz, getting a review by yours truly. Uncrowned Queen, A New Consideration of Margaret Beaufort. Then we have this trilogy by Ilana Meyer. We have Last Song Before Night, Fire Dance, and those of you who are, you better get to Sue Morrow out of the room, because yes, she is correctly seeing that the Last Song Before Night is half an inch taller than Fire Dance. That's going to drive her nuts. She's not the only one either. Then The Poet King. So that you've got a little trilogy there, all three different sizes. Then Running Out of Road, a murder mystery with a decidedly unconventional protagonist. And Upon a Burning Throne, book 1 in the Burnt Empire saga by Ashok Bankar. Big, thick fantasy novel. And that is great, and it gives you also a bit of Steve reviewing news. I will be reviewing a lot of these things, but for the big newspapers that are behind paywalls, so you have to subscribe, this will be for the Christian Science Monitor. And I'm also very happy to report that I will also be reviewing the new Hilary Mantel for the Christian Science Monitor, and that review will be ready soon. So this is just great. It's just fantastic to be reviewing these great big things that the people are going to be talking about. So there you go. That was a combination of new arrivals and mail, plus a little bit of bean frenzy. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.